She is proposed to, and on the day that they were to marry, he dies. And on the following year, on the anniversary of his death, she commits suicide. Why? She gave power to a day. A day. My question to you is, what are you giving power to? Whether we realize it or not, we all give power to something or someone, whether it's drugs, money, religion. It could be a number of things. People. We all give power to something or someone. Hey, it's Gary, and I want to share with you what I believe are some ideas or concepts that might help you manage your emotional health, especially if you've been through a lot of grief, trauma, death. And that's what my subject is today, especially during the holidays. For a lot of people, it's a very happy time. For a number of other people, it's a very depressing and discouraging time. For those of you who have challenges with regards to the holidays because maybe you've lost a loved one or something along that line, or extreme loneliness, I'm going to give you some ideas or things to think about that hopefully will enable you to manage things a lot better. Now, when I was 17 years old, in fact, you might be able to see a picture right there. That's a picture of my father. When I was 17 years old, he was murdered. Now, I want you to also make sure that we understand the difference between grieving and moving on. There's time that you have to grieve. There's grieving process. There's a period that has to be done. But there has to be a point sometime that we try to move on to some degree as opposed to staying in that grieving process. Now, the first year when somebody loses somebody or a loved one, or maybe a major trauma in your life, that first year is always the worst, and the reason being is because now you're going to experience things over the next year that you had experienced in the past years without that person, or when you had a tragedy, you never had the challenges that you have now compared to what you had before when you didn't have maybe I don't know, cut off arm, or maybe you were in the Marines or the military or something like that. Now, with this being said, one of the things that I try to do is I always try to understand that the world does not revolve around my beliefs or the way I look at things. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say Father's Day comes around. I don't have any kids, but if somebody says to me, Happy Father's Day. Now, I don't say anything verbally or non-verbally that's opposite of that. For example, well, why would it be happy? I don't even have my father. He's been murdered. Now, the moment I say something like that, I'm rewarding the behavior where I'm giving power to that day. And I refuse to give power to that day. Now, there's times I give power to some things. We all do, like I said, to some degree. But on a negative scale, I try to manage that. In fact, there's times that my father, the date of the anniversary of my father's death will come around, and I might even literally miss it. So I don't, have this visual, of all these, like some people, and I'm not knocking people and doing this. Every year they go to the gravesite and so forth. That's okay, but what's the emotion that you're going in with that? And is it year after year after year the same and very, very painful? It's going to be painful for a while. That's part of the grieving process, right? But be really, really careful about what you give power to. Another example, Memorial Day. Maybe you lost somebody, a close person or a friend. They gave their life for this country. Memorial Day comes around and people are celebrating Happy Memorial Day, and that person, maybe you who have lost a loved one, the first thing that comes out of your mind or your mouth is, I'm not happy, look what I've lost. And the moment you say that, especially if you verbally internalize or externalize to somebody, well, how can I be happy? I've lost this and this and this, in the war and, in the military or whatnot. But we have to realize that the world does not revolve around our belief system. Just because we might not be happy due to some circumstance that we've unfortunately experienced, that doesn't mean we give the right to somebody else for not to be happy as well, even though they're saying Happy Memorial Day or Happy Veterans Day. So what I'd like you to do now is take an inventory of some of the things that you give power to. Stop and think about that. Because people give power to, we can give power to drugs, sex, money, alcohol, religion, church, a certain person, people, behaviors, habits, addictions. We're all giving power to something or someone, God. It could be a number of different things. So the key is if you're giving power to a day where it's something that creates a lot of negativity, a lot of negative emotions, maybe you should work on trying to change that. Now, if you've recently, like I mentioned, had somebody die, that first year is going to be the worst. The first Christmas, terrible if you celebrated Christmas. Birthdays, anniversaries, they're going to be just absolutely depressing and discouraging. I mean, you'll be an emotional wreck. And if you've experienced that before and know what I'm talking about, you can drop a comment below and say, Gary, I totally agree. I get it. What I'd love you to do in the comments, though, while we're talking about those comments, why don't you comment some of the things that people could give power to? What might be some of the things that people give power to that maybe are not that obvious? It's obvious, the drugs, the alcohol, sex, money, God, so forth. But what are some other things that you might be thinking of that people give power to? And the bottom line is if you're not able to identify these things, what's going to happen, if you're not aware of them, when those days come, it's going to catch you. I remember some time ago I was doing a presentation, and a gentleman came up to me after the presentation, and he'd heard me speak before, and he'd heard me talk about this not giving power to a day. And he came up to me, and I don't remember it 100%, but it was something about some family member of his had passed away. And every single year, he got depressed and discouraged because he gave power to that day. And he came to me and said, Gary, you know, this just gave me so much freedom. That doesn't mean I love the person less, but I don't get depressed and discouraged and just cave in the whole day. In fact, I remember some time ago I was calling somebody. It was like a sales call or something like that. And you could tell the gentleman was older, you know, like maybe in his 70s or something like that. And when I spoke to him, I called, he picked up, and he was so rude and nasty. Now remember, I do not know who this person is. I have no idea who he is, don't know his circumstances. And he says to me, do you realize that my mother died? This is the anniversary of my mother's death. Boom, and hung up on me. He gave power to a day, and then he's taking it out on me like I'm supposed to know that. I don't even know who this person is. So I just want you to be aware of that. What are you giving power to? And if it's something that's negative, try to be aware of it. If it's something that's negative due to grief, go through the grieving process. And then after that, and you'll have to determine when that is, and then as you start trying to make some improvements in your emotions and your mental health, try your very best to give less and less power to that day. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. I'd love to see your comments below. If you've never subscribed to my channel, please do that. I'd love to see you again. I'm out of here. And between now and the next time we get to chat, you know what to do. And if this is your first time here, you will now. Don't let others rent space in your head. Have a blessed day, and try not to give power to a day.